Hi, I am making this video since I received a lot of requests related to understanding the Log4j vulnerability impact. And usually, in most of the enterprise system, you'll find a combination of multiple logging frameworks. We'll just brush through with the common logging frameworks used in Java, and then we'll address the actual vulnerability. So let's get started. So Java logging framework JUL, it's a standard logging framework bundled as part of the Java SDK. This was introduced quite later by the Java team, Oracle and Sun team, and before that there were already a lot of frameworks like JCL and Log4j which were in use by multiple systems. Now, coming to logging framework, there are usually basic three parts: logger, formatter, and appender. And for GUL, you will usually find basic classes like file handler, logger, simple formatter, and so on as part of the common implementation. So GUL is one particular framework supported out of the box by the Java SDK. Let's move on to the next. Apache Commons logging. This has been among the first few frameworks, and the advantage of this is it provides a way of plugging in multiple logging implementations at runtime. So it consists of three separate parts. We have the Commons logging, which includes the JCL API along with the default log factory and thin wrappers around other libraries, right, for like log4j and so on, so you could just easily plug and play. They have two more variants over there. One is the logging API, which is basically similar to Commons logging without the wrapper classes. Another is Commons logging adapter, which is basically only the adapters part of it to use in specific scenarios where you have shared path, class path being used across multiple applications, and then you want to do some customization on top of it. For JCL, there was no major upgrade rolled out post I think 2014 onwards, 2014-15. So JCL has not seen any recent releases. Let's move on with Log4j. Log4j has two flavors. One is Log4j 1.x, which is not supported post 2015. It was discontinued by the former Log4j team, and Log4j 2 was introduced. Log4j 2 basically follows a new architecture to overcome the inherent shortcomings of Log4j 1.x. It also has advanced capabilities like automatic configuration reload, asynchronous logging, and JNDI lookup. Okay, and Log4j 1.x was then adopted by SLF4j community, and they basically worked on top of Log4j 1.x and brought a native implementation by the name of Logback. Okay, again, what is SLF4j? Let's take a look. Yeah, in a while. What is Log4j 2? It's, as I said, it's an advanced logging framework. Now there are two core parts to it. One is the Log4j API, which is basically the actual API related classes and interfaces being present over there. It is also providing a bridge implementation in Log4j API to move from Log4j 1.x to Log4j 2. Log4j core is basically the actual logger implementation, and I have mentioned one more over here, which is the Log4j SLF4j binding. Now this is basically used between SLF4j and Log4j to make a transparent calls between the SLF4j you could say library and the Log4j2 logger implementation. So we'll come to SLF4j. Yeah, what is SLF4j? It is basically similar to JCL. It is a abstraction built on top of multiple logging framework to allow you to plug and play with each one of them independently. And yeah, it has its own set of advantages, right? So tomorrow you want to move in from one framework to another and so on, you could easily do it via Log4j, via SLF4j. So SLF4j API jar is the basic single dependency. That's all. I think most people know about it. Okay, as I said earlier, Logback is the native implementation built on top of Log4j 1.x. Now Logback is it basically consists of multiple components. Classic is again the API part of it. Logback core is the common library part of it, and Logback access is basically providing support to Tomcat and other containers as part of integration and HTTP specific logs. SLF4J supports other logging implementation via bridge libraries. So you will usually come across JCL over SLF4J, log4j over SLF4J, and so on. Okay. So for logback, one of the usual comment people used to make was logback was very slow as compared to log4j, but with logback's recent releases there has been significant performance improvement, so you could very well use logback as the logging framework of your choice. Okay, coming to the most critical part of it, that is the vulnerability. So what is this vulnerability and why there is so much of concern about it? Okay, so I've tried to capture it at a very high level. What is the description? So what is this vulnerability? In one of the previous slides, right, we saw that log4j2 allows you to have a lot of advanced capabilities, and two of them were JNDI lookup as part of logging messages and automatic reload. Now a combination of these two is basically what has been exploited as part of this vulnerability. So what can happen is you could pass in a expression and a JNDI expression as part of user input, and when you're logging that user input, so if you're logging that user input directly via log4j2 to be precise, then it will use that JNDI lookup expression and try to connect to the remote server. Now an attacker can leverage this particular combination, and it could connect to a malicious server and then download a payload and further exploit it for whatsoever the intent is of that particular attacker. What is the severity? It is a very critical bug because it will allow an attacker to get control of your system by downloading malicious packages on your server. Okay, and what is the cause? As I said, the cause is the advanced capabilities, right? So if you don't have the proper flex set, so for instance, if your JNDI lookup by default it was enabled till 2.14, right? So if your JNDI lookup is by default enabled and you leave it as it is, right, then just by passing in a JNDI expression in the user input, it would result in connection to the remote server. So that's one. So we already discussed the cause, JNDI lookup along with the automatic configuration reload. What are the possible solutions? So there will be definitely two strategies. One is short term and another is long term. So for short term strategy, definitely you will like to put in all the controls in place, most probably like network controls, putting in firewall rules, might be doing data data input sanitization at a web server level or at app server level. So all those kind of things can be taken care of at a network level. Okay, you might even do whitelisting on what kind of JNDI lookup should be allowed. You might block all the outbound calls going in from your actual application server boxes to anything on the internet, or might be only to the whitelisted servers and so on. So that is at a network level. Now coming in to the long-term solution, right? So as the first step would be disabling the JNDI lookup capability and upgrading it to the latest version. So if you could as the first basic step, if you are using log4j2, you need to disable the JNDI lookup capability, because most people don't use it. By default it was enabled. So if you're on 2.14 or below, disable it. I think that capability is available from 2.10 onwards. You could disable it and just restart your services, and it should not be allowing you to have a runtime JNDI lookup. Okay, the next step is upgrading it to the latest version, which is 2.16, where there are a lot of other scenarios that are evaluated by the log4j team, and fix for those were also provided as part of this particular vulnerability. So that's in terms of the log4j2 strategy. For log4j1, this vulnerability does not hold true in its entirety. Log4j1 does not support JNDI lookup at runtime. Okay, so in that way this vulnerability does not affect log4j1.x, but there is a scenario where if you are using JMS appender with log4j1.x, it will basically require you to do a JNDI lookup. Okay, So if you are not using JND lookup as part of your implementation for log4j 1.x, it's better to harden it further. So you could just remove the JMS appender class from your log4j 1.x library and rebundle it and redeploy. Okay, similarly for SLF4j, if for SLF4j this vulnerability is not holding through, okay, there is a vulnerability reported again on SLF4j, which was quite a while back, related to JND and remove messages as itself. But again, it's better to again upgrade SLF4j to the latest version. So as far as SLF4j is concerned, any version about 1.2.8 will take care of the other vulnerability which was not severe as this particular one has been addressed over there. So if you are on the latest version or SLF4j 1.2.8 and above, then that should suffice. Okay, now the most critical aspect of this entire vulnerability is, it brings to light that we need to do a lot of code scans to identify any such vulnerability which might be present in other libraries as well, right? So the focus on security is again back. So that's all I had for this video. Thanks a lot.